Good morning and welcome to St. Paul Evangelical Lutheran Church in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, this Saturday, November 13th. I'm going to open this morning with a prayer from Prayers for Healing. This particular book is 365 blessings, poems, and meditations from around the world. And I find it some days very, very comforting to just open to that day and see what the message is. Hold on in the darkness, though no gleam of light breaks through. Keep on dreaming dreams, although they never quite come true. Keep on moving forward, though you don't know what's ahead. Keep on keeping on, though it's a lonely road ahead. Keep on looking up towards the goal you have in view. Keep on at the task God has given you to do. Keep on in the hope that there are better times in store. Keep on praying for the things that you are waiting for. Blessings come to those who, in the turmoil of events, seek to see the goodness of the will of providence. Hold to this and never doubt. Keep head and spirits high. You'll discover that the storm was only passing by. Seek love in the pity of another's woe, in the gentle relief of another's care, in the darkness of night and the winter snow, in the naked and outcast. Seek love there. And this was an anonymous writing, but it says so much to us about keeping on and keeping the faith and just asking for guidance, even in our darkest times. And for many of us, this is a very trying time. And it seems that recently so many people around me have been touched by illness, depression, insecurity, confusion. And sometimes things are said because we're all so stressed, and with the holidays coming and with so much to get done, we forget that we have to stop and reflect and pray. And through those prayers and through that quiet will come a calm. And that's God's grace and His love that settles us. Our psalm today is Psalm 14. Fools say in their hearts, "There is no God." They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is no one who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven on humankind to see if there are any who are wise, who seek after God. They are all gone astray. They are all alike perverse. There is no one who does good. No, not one. Have they no knowledge, all the evildoers who eat up my people as they eat bread, and do not call upon the Lord? There they shall be in great terror, for God is with the company of the righteous. You would confound the plans of the poor, but the Lord is their refuge. Oh, that deliverance for Israel would come from Zion. When the Lord restores the fortunes of His people, Jacob will rejoice. Israel will be glad. Reminding us that God is always with those who try to do the right thing, who reflect back, who call on their God, our Father. In those times when there's so much confusion and depression and strife and just hatred, division, selfishness around us, we need to cling to our faith, and we need to show that there is a better way. The reading that I'm going to do next is, as those of you who have heard me before, is from the fish wrapper of my Lancaster County paper that I picked up a couple weeks ago when I was home. It's called the big blame. We have come a long way in our understanding of human behavior and motivation since April 18, 1864, when Abraham Lincoln made his famous speech at Baltimore, in which he said, "I am responsible to the American people, to the Christian world, to history, and on my final account, to God." We are no longer held accountable for our acts. Behavior, which was once motivated by the individual's concept of right and wrong, has become a reflex action controlled by forces beyond the individual's reach. And so, along with the big lie of the totalitarian countries, has come an even more evil influence affecting human behavior, the big blame. Unlike the big lie, however, the big blame has become an exact science. For every form of behavior, from a temper tantrum to a vicious murder, there is a proper blame, says this science. The individual no longer has any freedom of moral choice. The sins of the fathers and of society are his formidable inheritance, which he must accept and endure. Matching behavior with the proper blame has become as simple as matching a piece of fabric with a spool of thread. Soon every well-stocked bookshelf will contain a book of blames, a many-volumed work which will serve as a handy reference guide for the layman confronted with a problem. For instance, when Junior sets fire to his mattress, his mother can turn to page 13, volume 1, look under arson, J.G., and find the precise blame to apply to Junior's behavior, the big blame. Has replaced the hairbrush which would have been applied a generation or two ago. Or someday we may turn to our news sources and hear a commercial something like this. Is your conscience keeping you awake at night? Are you troubled with a sense of guilt? Do you have sudden attacks of remorse? Would you like to evade your responsibility? Then come in and see us today. We specialize in the use of the big blame. If we do not have one in stock to fit your behavior, we will be glad to make one up for you. Now this is not as ridiculous as it sounds. When Richard H. Crowe, the Staten Island suburbanite who embezzled nearly $1 million from the National City Bank of New York, was captured in Florida, he said, "I don't know why I did it. Maybe a good psychiatrist or two can figure it out." Crowe may not know why he embezzled nearly $1 million, but he expressed in words precisely the kind of thinking that is far too prevalent in contemporary society. We will do what we want to. If we get caught, a good psychiatrist or two will be able to figure out something in which we can attribute blame. One of the chief underwritten laws of this new science is that under no circumstances must the guilty individual be blamed. When 10 high school boys, all sons of well-to-do families, were arrested in Washington, D.C. on charges of auto theft and housebreaking, the public cried, "The parents are to blame. Police put some of the blame on the allure of automobiles." And some of the boys put the blame on pinball machines. "Pinball machines gobbled up all our spending money," they complained bitterly. "We were driven to steal." In the cribbing scandal at West Point, the big blame was too much emphasis on football, which made study pressure too great. In the baseball scandals, there was a number of blames: the subsidization of players with snap courses, the hypocrisy and the shame of college athletic codes, and the printing of betting odds in the newspaper. All of these young men were of average or above average intelligence. All were capable of discerning between right and wrong. But so conditioned have we become by the use of the big blame that no one suggested that the blame be put on where it belonged, on the young men themselves. Shakespeare in King Lear has Edmund say of the invaders, "This is the excellent foppery of the world. that when we are sick in fortune, often the spite of our own behavior, we make guilty of our disasters the sun, the moon, and the stars, as if we were villains by necessity, fools by heavenly compulsion, knaves, thieves, and treacherers by spherical predominance, drunkards, liars, and adulterers by an enforced obedience of planetary influence. Today's blames do not include the sun and moon and stars, but they include just about everything else. Parents are to blame is one of the most popular blames carried in stock at the present time. Others regularly stocked blames include the old standbys, heredity and environment, along with frustration, maladjustments, unhappy childhood, the critical age we live in, and emotional immaturity. No other generations of parents, living or dead, have been blamed for as many things as the parents of today's juveniles. Parents have become the built-in alibis for childhood misdeeds. Merely mentioning the word parent seems to be sufficient for a myriad of faults. Conferences are held throughout the country to study the problems of delinquency. After conferring for several days, briefcases are closed and the conference adjourns, with all members agreeing the juvenile offender is a product of emotionally immature parents. How to adjust to one's parents is a favorite topic for teenage discussion. Many American homes have become a house divided, with a Cold War being carried on by the parents on one side and the children or child on the other. Now there can be no quarrel with the legitimate accomplishments of psychiatry, psychology, and psychoanalysis. The quarrel is with the practitioners who are allowing these sciences to become an escape for those who wish to evade responsibility. A young career woman I know is having a wonderful time telling all who will listen how our analysts discovered that she hated her parents. The parents are foreign-born and had few advantages before coming to this country. However, they have become successful here, and the young woman graduated from one of the finest universities. After her graduation, she wanted nothing more to do with Mama and Papa, so a few hasty, inadequate visits to an analyst gave her what she wanted, a psychological reason for rejecting them. What people seem to want is a whipping boy or girl to blame for their sins. The philandering husband who is being kept awake night by his sense of guilt does not want help in ending the affair. He wants the pressure removed from his conscience, and this can best be done by putting the blame on his wife. Should his unmarried paramour suffer a sudden attack of remorse, the blame in her case will be put on her parents. Their old-fashioned ideas concerning this sort of thing had given her an immature viewpoint. The unfaithful wife is frustrated and does not understand her need. The unfaithful wife is frustrated, lonely, and neglected. Her husband does not understand her need for creative expression, so the blame for her extracurricular activity is put on the husband. Mama is the big blame for the unscrupulous activities of bachelor sons. Mama may have been dead for years, and the son may be well past the half-century. Nevertheless, Mama's rejection in his formative years conditioned him so that he has never been able to acclimate to a proper marriage relationship. The words blame, not until that thou hast examined, understand first, and then rebuke, are as applicable to today's problems as they were when they were written over 2,000 years ago. Let me read that again. The words blame, not until thou hast examined, understand first, and then rebuke, are as applicable to today's problems as they were when they were written over 2,000 years ago. It would be difficult to assess the potentialities for evil in the phrase, parents are to blame. It puts a weapon in the hand of every juvenile and says, go out and have fun. You're not responsible. It destroys harmony in the home. But its greatest evil lies in the fact that this ideology is reckless and irresponsible. It blames before it has examined. The names of the 10 Washington High boys were not made public, so of course the parents were not known. Yet letters poured into the Washington newspapers blaming the parents. Why? Even if some of the parents were to blame for their son's behavior, would it not necessarily follow that in social as well as in legal relationships, an individual is innocent until he has been proven guilty? Much of today's blame is assuredly not supported by evidence, and in many instances it becomes like the big lie and ignores all proof to the contrary. It would take years of study with a careful examination of every single case to prove that the basis of juvenile delinquency is the emotional immaturity of the parents. And who will be to blame for the parents' emotional immaturity? An elderly farmer whose 7 sons and daughters were all outstanding citizens in the community was asked if he had any special rules for child rearing. Only one, the farmer replied. As soon as a child was old enough, I gave him or her a calf to raise. By the time the calf was grown, the child had a pretty good idea of the meaning of responsibility. Unfortunately, there are not enough calves in the country to give one to each child, but a way must be found to give our children a sense of responsibility. Perhaps we must start by putting the old-fashioned copybook back into our schools. Copying Lincoln's words on responsibility would not only improve a child's penmanship, but it would acquaint him with a word that is fast disappearing from our vocabulary. We are not villains by necessity. The sun, moon, and stars, time and circumstances, and all the currently popular blames are not basically responsible for what we are. It is one's response to an influence that is the determining factor. The same soil that produces weeds will produce a rose. The same poverty that produces a criminal will produce an Abraham Lincoln and a George Washington Carver. The same parents who produced Al Scarface Capone produced his brother Richard J. Two-Gun Hart, who as a marshal enforced the law for 30 years. A normal 3-year-old child has an active intelligence. He not only knows what he wants, but in most instances he knows how to get it. The boy who throws a rock through a window knows he is doing wrong. If not, why would he run? No one can force another into wrongdoing. No one becomes a delinquent or criminal except through his own choice. The key words in the story of the prodigal son are these 4. He came to himself. He did not try to evade responsibility for the mistake he had made. He did not say, I have made a mess of my life. Figure out something or somebody I can blame. He had, the chances are he never would have, if he had, the chances are he never would have returned to his father's house, because the blame would have been based on an idea that he wouldn't have taken a journey into the far country in the first place if he had not hated his elder brother. The big blame is an evil and sinister philosophy. Like the big lie, it is a totalitarian idea and has no place in a democracy, where all problems of behavior should be considered and dealt with on an individual basis. The big blame makes man an automatron, his actions determined or predetermined by forces over which he has no control. It underwrites crime and subsidizes sin. It robs the individual of self-restraint, self-reliance, and subsidizes sin. It robs the individual of self-restraint, self-reliance, and self-respect. It destroys his conscience by removing his sense of guilt, and therein lies its greatest danger. For without a sense of guilt, man has no need of forgiveness, and without a need of forgiveness, man has no need of a God who forgives. The blame game must stop. It is nothing more than an attempt to avoid accountability. It leads to a false hope and is an exercise in futility. The words of Abraham Lincoln hold true still. I am responsible to God. I found this article very moving and fitting in today's society where so much is me, I, whatever I want or need or feel is right. And I have that right over everybody else's. How can we be a Christian society and feel that? Is not God still centermost in our heart and our lives? And did he not send his son, which we will celebrate here in December, his birth and his life that he lived as an example as how we're to live? There is no room for I in a democracy. A democracy, a Christian society, is based on one that believes that all of us are God's children with God's unbelievable love for each one of us, regardless of our color, our status, our sex, our community, our religion. We are all made in God's image, and we are all loved by that same God. Regardless of how we come to him, under what religion we practice, God has made all of us. And he has given to us free will. And he lives in each of us to help protect, love, and guide us through our deepest and darkest times. So, brothers and sisters, let us try to love each other, and let's help each other to struggle forward together in unity and be the light to the world that Christ asked us to be. I'm going to close with a prayer from one of my favorite books you've seen me go through before, Walking with Jesus. It's a daily devotional. And if you remember, one part of it I read in the morning is God talking to me for the day. And then the other part of it is God's word to me that night. And this is the prayer that would be for the evening. Thank you, Jesus, for saving me from the penalty of my mistakes. I'm so thankful. Thank you for being there when I've taken wrong paths and gotten myself tangled in relationships that I shouldn't have. Thank you for helping me through difficult times and protecting me from myself. Thank you for the plans that you have for me, plans to prosper me and to open the doors of possibility and blessing. I come to you today openly and honestly to make a new start. Remove the dust and soot from my life, Lord, and place me in my sweet destiny. I'm putting all my faith and trust in you. God sent his Son into the world not to judge the world, but to save the world through him. And much as our reading was this morning, God looks down on us and he prays that we find his voice in all the turmoil around us, for he will light our path and guide us home. So have a blessed week. Go forward, helping to discern God's way and word in our life as we live it today. God bless you and keep you safe. We'll talk again.